felirult azóta.
De azért ez az unikum, meg?
Igen, még pedig előrezni, hogy egyetlen olyan, de előfordult.
Moći će se prijaviti.
Itt megint ugyanaz a kérdés, mint a terrorizmus elleni.
This next election, then, voting. I mean, I've nothing against women having a vote. I'm glad they do. So long as they're sensible. Which is
Look at it. The Liberal Party campaigned long and hard for truly universal suffrage.
I know that, sir, and in principle I'm with you all the way. Democracy is a wonderful thing, but in practice, you see it. First time they go to the polls, we'll have Douglas Fairbanks in number 10.
Couldn't do much worse than Baldwin.
Don't they have parents?
Good morning, Mrs. Pace. My name is Edgar Butler, and this is Mr. Burkett, who will be defending you in court.
Pleased to meet you.
How are they treating you here, Mrs. Pace? Do you have everything you need?
Well, they've all been very kind. But I miss the children. I worry about little Jean.
Of course.
There are babies here. 4 of them. Sometimes I hear them crying at night. One of them's called Jean, too. I've been knitting some socks for her just to keep my mind off things. I managed 5 pairs so far.
Excellent. Now, Mrs. Pace, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you some questions of a delicate nature about your husband and the way he treated you during your married life.
I've been through all that with the police and the colonies.
Yes, I've read the accounts, but it's important I hear it from the person. Easily the details can become very... Now, you were married when you were 17.
That's right. After I lost my mother, I went into service down in He said I had to come back and be held responsible. So I did.
And in general, would you say the marriage was
The beatings began nearly as soon as they started home together as man and wife.
I'm sure.
He took his belt to me. First time it happened, I ran all the way home to my father's house. It was the middle of the night and I didn't know what else to do. He came after me, of course. He stood outside the house and shouted for me.
Forgive me for asking, Mrs. Pace, but was your husband a drinking man?
No, not my Harry. Never cared for it. He loved sweets, though. He'd do anything for a quarter of sweets.
After he followed you to your father's house, you went back to him?
Not that night, no. He was shouting and shouting for me, so my brother opened the window and tried to reason with him. Harry told him to put my head out the window so he could shoot it off. He had a pistol. I thought he could change. He said he was sorry for what had happened. Soon after I went back to him, he started tying me to the bedpost when he went out to look after his sheep. The first time he did it, I thought he'd only be gone a few minutes. Then it started to get dark. He was gone 8 hours.
You were left without food and water?
I was, sir.
And who looked after the children?
This was right at the beginning, before they came along.
Did your husband's manner change? Was he more attentive to you than you were expecting?
Well, the beatings got worse, so I suppose so. 5 of my children were born dead or died very soon after. If I tell you their names, Mr. Burkett, will you write them down?
If you wish me to.
There were Cyril, Hillier, Kathleen, Ursula, and little William. He beat me so badly when I was carrying my babies, it's a wonder any of them survived. And the living children didn't fare no better. Once he poured petrol all over their bedclothes and set them on fire.
Why did he do these things?
He was a very angry man. He'd thrash my Dorothy if she tried to get between us when he was in one of his moods. He'd take a strap to the boys. I never knew where the rages came from. I tried my best to please him.
I'm sure you did.
He hated me, took care for anything. My brother Fred gave me a little dog once as a present. A Pomeranian. You know?
Yes?
No bigger than a teacup. He snatched it out of my hands and dashed it against the wall. Sometimes in the evening I'd see him walking home through the fields towards Rose Cottage, and there'd be something in the way he was walking. With his head down, brushing at the grass with his stick. I'd know I was for it when I got home. I'm sorry, Mr. Burkett, Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mrs. Pease.
But doesn't bear thinking about. I'm not one to speak ill of the dead, but he does sound like a piece of work, doesn't he?
You don't think, Edgar, you don't think she sounded a little bit rehearsed? Like something you might read in the world's pictorial news?
Well, she's given statements at the coroner's court, local police, Scotland Yard, magistrates, solicitors. Hardly surprising.
But I assume the newspaper people have been to see her in prison.
Hundreds, I would have thought. Well, you think somebody might have been coaching her?
It happens. Never stands well in the witness box. And nothing, she says, actually adds up to her defense. The cruelty, the beatings, the little dog will almost certainly be used against her. She's not sure of a motive or two, is she? Did you dig up anything on Harry Pace's brother?
Elton Pace. Chap at the solicitors has got all the documents. Elton Pace's small holding is adjacent to Rose Cottage, and there's been argy-bargy about it for ages. He's apparently very keen to get his hands on Harry's bit of land.
Keen enough to kill for it?
Dunno. Keen enough to stop a funeral. Possibly even keen enough to see his sister-in-law hanged. We've got lunch booked with Dupre. The family doctor.
Ah.
Yes, I had occasion to treat Harry Pace several times in the last few years. In fact, Mr. Burkett, that man over there.
Which man?
Looks familiar.
Oh, Lord Chesterton.
G.K. Chesterton. Of course. I've seen his picture.
Has he seen me?
I don't think so.
I'm afraid this trial has turned into a three-ring circus. There are, to my certain knowledge, some 7 celebrated writers in town. 3 of them are staying here at the King's Arms.
7?
Chesterton spoke to me yesterday evening in what's often described as his characteristically ebullient manner.
Oh.
Is he advancing?
Retreating.
Good. How's your chop?
Excellent. Where was I?
Attending Harry Pace.
Aye, of course. Well, I've attended the whole family on and off for several years. Mrs. Pace had 10 confinements in 15 years, poor thing. Not always with happy results.
Yes, and Mr. Pace was not always a trusted helpmate.
Harry Pace. Well, where do you start? He was a Forest of Dean man.
I was wondering if you could fill in some detail on the coroner's report. Tell me, for instance, about Mr. Pace's illness last summer.
Oh, I need to consult my notes.
Of course.
Mrs. Pace brought her husband into my surgery. Mega.
Puppies have no spots when they're first born. They develop them as they get older.
And the old woman.
Not even.
Can't get anybody.
We don't know what we're...
Hundreds of blondes march through.
33 44 606 telefon.